You can do that via WhatsApp number 055-556-1034, and we will respond to some of your messages and get our panel members to respond to you as well if you have a question. We are talking about Ghana's oil revenues, and there's an organization that has just issued a report for the year 2022, and we'll get into the details of that report. Established in September in 2011, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, has continued to fulfill its mandate of monitoring and evaluating the management and use of Ghana's petroleum revenues by the government and stakeholder institutions in compliance with provisions of Act 815 of the committee prepares semi-annual and annual reports which aim at keeping Ghanaians and other interested stakeholders regularly informed about the management and utilization of the country's petroleum revenues. Since its inception, the committee has published a total of 23 reports, 11 semi-annual and 12 annual ones. This time is the 2022 annual report, and it covers the period January to December 2022, encompassing a broad range of issues relating to petroleum revenue management, such as information on production, liftings, total revenues accruing, and allocation by government, ABFA utilization, and the management of the funds set aside in the Ghana Petroleum Funds, Ghana Stabilization Fund, and the Ghana Heritage Fund. This morning, we are going to examine the 2022 report, and I've been joined by two gentlemen, Mr. Isaac Dramina, coordinator at PIAC, and Mr. Eric, therefore, who is also a member at PIAC. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And I have a copy of the actual book in front of me, but there are some highlights that we put together, and so I'll go over and take viewers through some of the topical findings, and then I'll be back so we have a more in-depth conversation. So come with me as I go to the board to the highlights of the 2022 PIAC annual report. Professor Kwame Edom Frimpong is the chairman of PIAC, and he's talking about it. So this is what the thing contains. We are talking about the mandate of PIAC and the scope of the study that it's putting before us, based on the collection and collation, reconciliation and analysis of production and revenue data from relevant stakeholders. And so they are telling us the methods that they used to develop the report, and the key insights, which is what got everybody talking, are some of the things that you're seeing on your screen right now. Once the production from the Jubilee fields, and then the others 10 and co, the total at the bottom of your screen there. More in pictorial representation of what the cumulative crude oil production is like. So we are seeing what the years look like. 2010 is 1,181,000 and 88. We are looking at 2022, which is the year that this report is covering, and we are at 51,000,000.7 thereabouts. So more on the key highlights. Again, this is about gas production, Jubilee, what it provides us, and the other fields as well, 51% from SGN. Cumulative gas production also in that report. We are going to put all these details on our social media handles so that you get a sense of what we are talking about. So there's a monthly breakdown of how we used gas in the year 2022, and you can see the figures from January all the way up to December, the total of 68,481 in there. Sources of petroleum revenue, we are getting many of them from these. CAPI, CIT, royalty, PHF income, all the figures stated there. Total revenues, and this is the big number, 1,428,760 in US dollars is what we are seeing, and it's quite a huge. Is it 1 billion? I think it is 1,428,760,076. So this is what we got in dollar terms for the oil that was produced. Cumulative petroleum revenue, also seeing figures there. 2011, when production first started, we are seeing 444 there. Now we are all the way up to that number, and it's in billions of dollars. Cumulative revenue, $8.79 billion. Distribution, from PHF, this is where all the gas went that was produced from that particular source. And all the figures are there. Like I said, we'll put all that on our social media handles so that you can peruse them in a bit more detail. So the priority areas where the revenues are expected to be spent: agriculture, physical infrastructure and service delivery in education and health, roads, rail and other critical development infrastructure, and also on industrialization. But this is what the budget looks like. The budgeted versus the actual. The figures are on your screen. Agriculture, the budget was 1.38, and this is in millions of Ghana cedis, but the actual spend was 95.84. Other figures are on your screen. Critical sector and the service for education and health also going into 1,942,000. I don't want to say too many of the figures because some people may get confused, but this is where the thrust of the matter is. Here are the 16 key findings. We'll try and get through them as quickly as possible. This basically saying that crude oil production has been declining for 3 consecutive years. They're giving us some figures about what we used to produce in 2019 and where it's declined to at the point of 6.32%. We are also getting indications that it's a decline over the 3-year period is at about 10%. So quite worrying trend there. Now, another twist to the tail: even though the production is declining, the revenues we are getting from the crude oil is increasing. So we're seeing some figures also there. Surface rental areas continuing to rise, and the details are all contained in the report, which we'll be posting on our social media handles. We are also told that for 2 years in a row, the ministry has not been able to meet the requirement to transfer 5% of the ABFA APFA to the District Assembly Common Fund, contrary to the decision of the Supreme Court of Ghana in the case of Kodo and another versus Attorney General in 2019. We'll get to understand why and if the PIAC committee was able to establish a basis for the non-transfer of those funds. The industrialization priority area also received some 9.2 million Ghana cedis, and then the disbursement, which represents 4.29% of the amount for the priority area for 2022, does not reflect giving priority to industrialization in the use of ABFA. We'll try and understand what that is. Utilization. So what was the money used for? 643 million Ghana cedis was transferred to GIF in 2022. According to the fund, the entire disbursement was used to support the Agenda 111 project of the government, and this is the second year after 2021 that GIF has received funds for the Agenda 111 project. So we are asking the question, if the monies are going into the project, how is the project faring? What's happening to Agenda 111? We'll put some of those questions to the authorities, but these are some of the findings. An amount of 290 million Ghana cedis was allocated to the fund that runs this Agenda 111 project. We'll find out what those monies are being used for when we engage with some of the government officials on this matter. Management and performance of the GPFs, even though 508,656,349 US dollars was withdrawn from the GSF fund, the balance of the GPFs increased by 9.31%. And you're seeing the figures of the increase there as at the end of 2022. Retention of the current cap of $100 million US dollars for the GFS for the year 2022 is not in accordance with the formula stipulated by LI 3281. Why is that? We'll find out from PIAC if they got an answer to that question. GNPC allocation and utilization. Expenditure on various line items, mainly administrative expenditure, and GNPC's capital project witnessed significant increases by more than 200%. And we are told they received this whopping amount, 38,835,537. Gas company revenue from the cash waterfall mechanism constitutes petroleum revenue. It was not paid into the BFS. So quite some key findings there. It was not paid. That amount was not paid into the PHF fund. Allocation and utilization. GNPC continues to fund the construction of roads in the Western region. The Western Corridor Enclave constitutes the quasi-facial expenditure and it should be the primary responsibility of central government and not the NOC. So the total expenditure by GNPC on this road since 2014 has been $124 million. So it's not GNPC's job to construct roads in the Western Corridor Enclave. So why do they continue to do that? We'll find out if PIAC was able to find some answers. GNPC using JOL to carry out operations not approved in GNPC's work plan for 2022. Notable examples: Explorco cash calls on Springfield, any Block 4, etc. Monies going into those projects, 5,546,000. Other key findings also as well, but we'll try and digest what we've been able to get through so far. And the gentleman at my table, Mr. Isaac Dramina, is the coordinator at PIAC, and Mr. Eric, therefore, is also a member. Gentlemen, so the key thing at the start of the findings for us was the disconnect between how much we are producing and how much we are making from what we are producing. One is going consistently up and the other is coming consistently down. Why do we find production levels dropping and yet we are getting more revenues even with a reducing production that we have?
Okay, let me take that one.
Okay.
Yes, production levels are dropping. It's been coming down for the past 3 years, since 2019. But you're all aware that in 2021, when this Russian-Ukraine war came up, oil prices went up significantly to over $120 per barrel. So even though the quantity produced was low, the cost of oil went high, and that is what increased our revenues. That's simply the case.
That's simply the case.
Yes.
Should we be concerned that production rates are declining? What's the cause? What's happening with the decrease there?
Well, the decrease is technical. The wells are not producing as much as they were before, and this is normal in the industry. There are also some technical issues, because production can increase when you take out all the gas that comes out. Unfortunately, we don't have infrastructure to be able to utilize the gas fully, so some of it is re-injected into the wells, which can also affect the production. So there's a hope that if our gas infrastructure is elevated to a point where we can consume all the gas that is coming out of the wells, then production may come back up. But for now, it's for technical reasons that production has gone down.
Are there steps being taken to make sure that this happens? Because you're saying the wells are not performing as well as they should, and it's technical. So what can anything be done about that?
Well, gas infrastructure is being built to be able to take up the amount of gas that is coming out of the wells. So we hope that in the next few years that issue will be resolved. But we also encourage government to speed up the licensing of new wells, so that production can increase across the country. Some fields are in exploration and development stages, but we need for them to speed up so that we can begin to receive some production from there. New agreements are not being signed. You know, there's a transition from hydrocarbon to non-fossil fuel energy usage. That's the energy transition is in place. So a lot of the companies that previously would have been interested in coming to drill oil, policy-wise, are changing their program. So that is another issue that we have to contend with. We are hoping that more favorable conditions will be given to the international oil companies to attract them to come in and help us.
You think the existing conditions are not favorable enough?
Well, what has happened is, in the past, we had to lower the conditions for them to make it attractive. We had to de-risk the oil fields to attract them to come in. After they came in, we felt we were not getting enough from the oil production, and therefore we renegotiated stricter terms to give us more revenue. But in the process, it didn't make it also attractive. So we're between a rock and a hard place as to whether we want to put in conditions that will bring us more revenue, which then doesn't make the fields attractive, or will lower the conditions and make it attractive for them to come in.
What does PIAC think? Is it better for us to ask for more to be given to us as proceeds from our natural resources, or should we ask for the other side of the argument? We want investors to come in and do it, and so accept perhaps some of the terms that they would prefer.
I think that looking at the fact that we are transitioning from fossil fuels to renewables, then we need to consider lowering the conditions for them, because we are transitioning. People are no longer interested in hydrocarbons. So if that you still want to get them to come in, there should be an incentive for them to come. So we have to manage interest very well. I think if we drop some of the conditions to make it attractive for them to come, for us to exploit the oil, it will be good. Because if we do the transitioning, it's likely that the pricing of oil will go down. And so in future, even if you are extracting oil, you may not get as much revenue. So it's better to do it now and use the resources to do long-term investments that will benefit generations yet to come.
Okay, I think I'm getting what you're saying, Mr. Defo. So in the next few years, the world would have moved from these kinds of sources of energy to greener sources of energy.
Right.
So if we still have these resources, we cannot hold on to them in 10, 20 plus years, because the whole world would have gone to perhaps electrical cars, so no petrol and diesel.
Exactly.
So if we have them now, get as much as we can from them, use the monies to invest in green technologies.
Exactly.
What you're saying. I think I'm getting your point now. You talked about new wells, and then to speed up the process of licensing of new wells. Which areas of the country are we talking about? I'll get to you in a bit, Mr. Dramina. I just want to finish with Mr. Defo on this particular issue. The western part of Ghana has seen a lot of development in terms of oil production. Are these new agreements you are talking about still concentrated in that part, or is it a bit more spread out?
Well, we're drilling oil offshore for now, and some blocks have also been assigned to other companies, and they're doing exploration and prospecting there. But GNPC is doing some prospecting onshore, and we hope that that will also come upstream. What is happening is that if we find the oil onshore, the production costs are cheaper. We have the human resource and technology available to us to be able to exploit that resource on land. But we don't have the technology and skills to do the offshore. That's why the international companies are working offshore. But when it gets to the opportunity where we can find it on land, then, which is the Voltairean Basin that GMPC is working on, then what will happen is that we would be able to do it ourselves and maximize the revenue that emanates from it.
So that we localize
yes.
the prospecting aspect of it.
Right.
So let me bring Mr. Dramina into this. Another key finding, apart from the increasing revenues but decreasing production numbers, is the fact that the monies that we are expecting to be paid into certain critical areas are not being paid. What's happening there? Why is it that we are finding the APFA in such straits?
Right, thank you. So the Act, the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, provides for the entire value chain. When the revenues come in, how they should be distributed, how they should be allocated. The Act provides that every peso or every dime that comes to the country from upstream petroleum operations should first be deposited into the Petroleum Holding Fund. So it is the mother fund that receives every dime that comes to the state from upstream petroleum operations. Now the Act provides that when the funds come in, one revenue stream we call the carried and participating interest. The Act says that not more than 55% of that should be given to the National Oil Company, that's GNPC. So Parliament has decided, and for the past few years, that is the percentage that has been used. About 30% of carried and participating interest is given to GMPC for their operations. They represent the commercial interest of the state in upstream petroleum operations. Now, the Act provides that when you take whatever is left of the carried and participating interest and you add it to all the other revenue streams to make a new 100%, which the Act calls benchmark revenue, not more than 70% of that should be spent in the budget, and that is what is called the annual budget funding amount, or the ABFA. Now, with regards to ABFA, the Act understands that it is not able to meet all our development needs at a time. And so the Act provides that in the areas it calls priority areas, for every 3 years, the Minister for Finance should recommend not more than 4 of the priority areas for approval by Parliament, and those areas are the areas the petroleum revenue should be spent. So for the years 2020 to 2022, the government selected agric, industrialization, education and health together, and then roads, rail, and other critical infrastructure. So these 4 priority areas are the areas selected by the government for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022. And those are the areas the petroleum revenue that came to government during the period was spent on. Now, in the budget, the government indicates the percentage allocations it plans to make to each of the priority areas, and I think the highlights you showed departure. Of course, budget is usually not the same as actual. In fact, it's a strange phenomenon to see budget as exactly as actual. But when actual departs very significantly from budget, then there is cause for concern. The thoroughness of the budgeting that went on, the need to bridge the gap between actual figures and budget. So if you take industrialization, for example, it's one of the findings the committee made, that even though industrialization is one of the 4 priority areas the government has selected that receive petroleum revenue for the year 2022, in the first place, the priority area was supposed to receive not more than what it actually was budgeted to receive, was not even up to 2% of the 1.4 billion ABFA. But in actual fact, what industrialization received was about 4.2% of the budgeted. So then I think it comes to an absolute figure of about 9 million Ghana cedis. So the committee's concern is, if government has rightly so identified industrialization as a priority area to spend petroleum revenue to create jobs and industrialize, it's a good decision. But then is 9 million Ghana cedis able to bring industrialization alive to the point where jobs are created for the teeming unemployed? Could we have done better? Could more petroleum revenue have been allocated?
Does PIAC think 9 million is enough to invest in industrialization?
The committee thinks it is lower. And the committee's thinking is based on the fact that there are 12 priority areas for over 3 years. The government has selected 4. And so if you have selected an area as a priority area, then certainly there is a plan to develop something out of it. And 2022 has been our best year since 2011, when petroleum revenue really went up. If the highlights you showed, Ghana made about $1.43 billion US, and when you convert whatever went to the ABFA, I think it came to about 4.4 billion Ghana cedis. So if you take 4.4 billion Ghana cedis to be shared over the 4 priority areas, and industrialization, one of the 4, received 9 million Ghana cedis out of the 4.4 billion.
Did you find out where the rest of the 4.4 billion went? If industrialization got 9 million, what else went into something else? Perhaps government felt education, health was more important, and so they put a lot more in there. Did Did the members find out that
Yes.
information?
So the report actually details out the allocations to each of the four, and the 4.4 is accounted for.
Okay.
So the issue is not about any amount going amiss. The issue is about if industrialization is really a
Is
priority
that
area
important?
for the government, and rightly so it is, then let's see it demonstrated in the amount of money government commits to the area. Because the government could have chosen one priority area. It was still in line with the law. The government could have chosen 2 priority areas. The government could have chosen 3. But the government in its wisdom chose 4. And amongst the 4 is industrialization. And if you take 9 million out of 4.4 billion, then you would wonder whether really industrialization is a priority area demonstrated in the amount of petroleum revenue that went there. Okay. Then also the issue of the amount of money that was disbursed to the District Assembly Common Fund. In the Act itself, there is no provision requiring the Minister for Finance to allocate petroleum revenue to the District Assembly Common Fund. But in 2019, the Member of Parliament for, I think, Ho Central, Honorable Podo, and another citizen of Ghana took this matter to the Supreme Court that when the Constitution speaks about total government revenue, it is inclusive of the annual budget funding amount. So just as 5% of total government revenue will be allocated to the District Assembly Common Fund, whatever government spends at part of petroleum revenue in the budget, that's ABFA, 5% of that should be added to what goes there.
But that has not happened.
So the Supreme Court found, more like agreed with Honorable Podo's view that this should be the law. So 2020 was the COVID year, is considered to be a special year, so government didn't start implementing. So implementation actually started in 2021. And in 2021, 1.79% of the ABFA was transferred to the District Assembly Common Fund, which was not in line with the decision of the Supreme Court, because the decision was that 5% at least of the ABFA should be transferred to the District Assembly Common Fund. 2022 was the second year, and the amount of money that was transferred to the District Assembly Common Fund was a little over 2%.
2.39.
It's 2.39%. Of course, this represents an improvement on the 2021 figure, but it's still below the 5%, which the Supreme Court said should be transferred from the ABFA.
Did you find out if there was a reason? Did you reach out to the Ministry of Finance? Did they tell you why they've sent only those reduced figures, 1.7 in 2021 and now 2.39 in 22?
The committee is yet to get that brief from the ministry.
So we are still waiting for that information to be made available to us. And it's not just that, is it? It's also talking about surface rental arrears from defaulting institutions. What's the surface rental arrears? What's the surface rental? What fee is it? Which kinds of companies should pay this amount?
Well, surface rental is payable covering the area in which the oil companies operate. So we call them in technical terms blocks. So depending on the size of your block, then the surface rental is calculated. So if you have a big block, then you should expect to pay more. If you have a small block, you expect to pay less. Now this is chargeable annually. But what we've realized is that the Ghana Revenue Authority, who is responsible for collecting this money, sometimes does not push to get the funds paid within the year. So there's always an overflow into the next year with arrears. But some prospecting companies have had to suspend work. Some agreements have been terminated because when you're given the block, you submit a plan of development as to how you're going to operate. It is approved by the Petroleum Commission, and then you start work. So if you are not performing according to the plan and there are delays, the Petroleum Commission has the right to recommend to the Minister of Energy to terminate the agreement. So some agreements have been terminated, and we find that a chunk of the arrears is attributable to those companies that have ceased operations or have their agreements terminated. Unfortunately, GRA was unable to collect those monies before they left. Well, I think GRA will have to answer to that, but the situation is that...
So just like in the case of my question to Mr. Jamna, asking if the Finance Ministry was able to explain to PIAC why it was unable to meet that threshold, GRA, did you reach out to them?
Yeah, we reached out to them. We've reached out to them, but the situation of GRA is that once the agreements got terminated, the companies left the jurisdiction. So now it has become a liability that has to be pursued beyond the boundaries of Ghana. And that responsibility GRA has to take up.
How much money are we talking about?
It's about 2.7 million thereabout. And let me see if I can get you the actual...
Is there a chance that we might get any of these monies back? Because we are talking about some that have had to fold up because of certain issues.
In the past year, GRA has not been very successful. So we don't know what strategies or tactics they are going to use now to be able to redeem those funds for the country. But in the past, this is not the first time it has happened. And we hope that they will be able to recover some of it, if not all, in due course.
We'll put some questions to GRA, not quite clear when those monies will be coming back into government coffers. But there's a point in the key findings that I also find quite intriguing, and it's to do with the monies that were transferred to GIF in 2022, which we are being told was used to support the Agenda 111 project of the government. What's the story there, Mr. Jamna?
All right, thank you. So the think in order for the petroleum revenues to be used to develop Ghana's infrastructure, in 2015, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund Act was passed. And one of the sources of revenue for the fund, for its mission, was a certain percentage of the annual budget funding amount to it. Actually, it was supposed to be not more than 20% of the public investment expenditure aspect of the fund that goes into the budget. So, petroleum revenue has been given to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. It will interest viewers to note that about $30 million of the fund given to GIF was invested in the Kotoka Terminal 3, in building the Kotoka Terminal 3. So that is the aspect of petroleum revenue that was invested in the Kotoka Terminal 3's construction. Now, in 2018, a law was passed to discontinue allocation of petroleum revenue to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. And it was based on discussions and advocacy that this allocation was restored. And the restoration came with the caveat that whatever was to be allocated to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund was directed by the government to be used for a particular purpose. In 2021, the allocation that went to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund was to support the government's Agenda 111 project. I think viewers know about this project well enough. We don't need to belabor the point. So in 2022, additional petroleum revenue was allocated to the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. And together, the amount of petroleum revenue that has been invested in the government's Agenda 111 is the amount provided there. A total of, I think, 73 years, 643.6 million Ghana cedis. Yes.
Utilization of APFA, if we can get that information on the screen, you'll see that there's part of the report that talks about what that money is supposed to be used for. An amount of 643.61 million Ghana cedis, which is the equivalent of $73.68 million was transferred to GIIF. So GIF is the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, in 2022. According to the fund, the entire disbursement was used to support the Agenda 111 project of the government. And the report goes on to say this is the second year after 2021 that the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund has received funds for the Agenda 111 project. They received an amount of 290.38 million Ghana cedis, equivalent of $49.39 million in 2021 to support the Agenda 111 project. Remember, Agenda 111 is a government program or government initiative aiming to provide one hospital state-of-the-art facility in 111 districts and other MMDAs, Metropolitan District Assembly areas, where there is no health facility. That's Agenda 111. So that amount of money being put into there, did you reach out again, and I asked this, to the agency in charge, the project managers for Agenda 111, to ask the details of how these millions of cedis had been disbursed and what the state of Agenda 111 is?
Okay, so PIAC has been in constant touch with Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. Now, their mission really is to be the coordinating agency that is supporting the implementation of the project. In fact, the project is, it's high in funding. So Petroleum Revenue contributes to the pot for funding the entire project. And GIF is the agency of government that is coordinating this. But the issue really with which the committee raised are actually two issues. The first is that one of the priority areas government has selected over the period 2020 to 2022 is health. So one reasonably would have expected that Agenda 111 being massive infrastructure under health would be spent under the health priority area, so that it is clear that the Agenda 111 expenditures are being executed under health, which
just
is
like the industrialization, which got 9 million.
Exactly, but it is not so. It is rather being spent under the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. But the act that established the fund gave the fund a mandate to make investments into commercial infrastructure that will bring returns to the state. So if you take the investment in the Kotoka Terminal 3, for instance, since the investment was made, GIF informs PIAC that what has come to the state in terms of interest or in terms of returns on the investment is about 7 million Ghana cedis.
For 30 million USD that was invested.
Yes. So then it means that the investment is bringing returns to the state. And so GIF should be given more petroleum revenue to make more of such investments that will bring returns to the state. But the investment that is being made in Agenda 111 is a social project, which will not bring financial returns to the state. But additionally, the fund has been limited to the point that ABFA it receives will not be invested in commercial infrastructure that will bring returns. The entire disbursement that goes to the fund is invested in Agenda 111.
But isn't it to be expected that if the hospitals are up and running, there will be some kind of money that is coming, is returning, or is that not the case?
That is not the primary thing. You know that hospitals are not run primarily with the intention that they would bring in revenue.
Right.
But even be that as it may, that can reasonably be managed by the Ministry of Health and under the health priority area, so that ABFA given to the fund will be invested in similar commercial infrastructure projects that will bring more and more returns to the state. So right now, every penny of petroleum revenue that goes to GIF is invested in Agenda 111. So even if they identify any commercial infrastructure projects they think it would be worth investing in, petroleum revenue cannot be invested there. And you know that petroleum is an exhaustible resource. So in the next 20, 30, 40 years, we may run out of petroleum being produced. And if the revenues are not coming anymore, what are we going to show to our children then and posterity that when we had petroleum revenue, we were able to build this infrastructure that has lasted the test of time whose benefit has outlived the generations in whose time it was built. So that has been one of the committee's issues with allocations to the fund. It is not against petroleum revenue being given to support the Agenda 1 project, not at all. But the committee's position is that let it be done under the health priority area, and let every petroleum revenue that is given to GIF be invested in commercial infrastructure that will bring returns to the state, just like it was done for Kotoka Terminal 3.
Okay, so that it gives me quite a bit of clarity. I'll come to you for this one, Mr. Therefore, talking about the retention of the current cap of 100 million USD on the GSF for 2022, not being in accordance with the formula stipulated in LI 2381. So tell us what LI 2381 really is meant to do, and why this amount is not fit for purpose.
Yeah, what has happened is that according to the PRME, in critical times when there are budget shortfalls, the finance minister can go to Parliament and request that the cap or the funds in the Ghana Stabilization Fund be capped at a certain level so that the amount above the cap can be utilized to support the budget. So during the COVID era, this was done, and the cap was reduced to 100 million, and then the excess was taken to support the annual budget. Now, the challenge we have is that we run an annual budget cycle. So if in a particular year you have a challenge like that and you are allowed to cap, it should be applicable to that year's budget, so that beyond that year you continue to rebuild or replenish the fund. Because in any subsequent year, if you have another emergency and the cap is low, then there will be no funds for you to take and solve your problem. Now, it appears that when the cap was set, it has remained there for years to date. And we find that to be irregular, because at what point do you start replenishing the fund? So our position is that Parliament should have taken cognizance of this and ensured that immediately after the COVID year, we would have removed the capping and allowed the fund to rebuild. But as it is now, it's still there. The cap is still at 100. It's not building. So any money that goes into the fund now beyond 100 can be taken away. The position of the Finance Ministry is that Parliament, in its approval, did not limit the tenure of the capping. But then the LI 2381 has a formula that is applied towards the petroleum revenues that we receive, and then takes a portion into the Ghana Stabilization Fund. Now, if we use that formula, then by now, since 2019 when the cap was done, by now we should have mobilized about 643 million in the Stabilization Fund, so that in case of another emergency,
we'll have a fallback.
But as it is now, the fund's limit is, the capping limit is 100 million, and it's not building up, which is not good, because if anything should happen even in this year, that means we will virtually deplete the fund by going to take the remaining 100 million. But that is not the way that the LI expects it to operate.
We will wrap this up very quickly. So this discussion, and perhaps this is the last point I will raise, about GNPC constructing roads, and the argument in the report that it is not GNPC's responsibility to get into construction of roads in that Western Corridor enclave. How should that be fixed? You identified that as a problem. Is that not GNPC's project as a corporate social responsibility? Are they using the 50% of their allocation of the petroleum revenues to build these things when it should be the responsibility of government?
You want to take
we can take it together.
Okay, you know, the situation is that road construction is a responsibility of national government to construct roads. Now, when we found the oil and there was a need to develop some infrastructure within the enclave, to be able to move equipment and products across the region, the enclave. GNPC did some investment in roads. That's fine. We didn't expect it to continue. But what is happening is that virtually every year, GNPC is building roads. And we are saying that the money given to GNPC is to help GNPC to be resourced to develop a hydrocarbon potential or our petroleum resources. So if it is going into road construction, then it is veering away from its core activity and doing something that is not under its jurisdiction.
So perhaps they have more, so they can go into roads in addition to everything.
They don't have enough.
Okay. So stay with your core mandate.
Yes, it's affecting their ability to accelerate the exploitation of the petroleum resources. So if you are diverting funds into road construction under the guise of corporate social investment or corporate social responsibility,
I suggested that perhaps it's corporate.
Where do you get your money?
I don't know if that's
where do you get money from to do your core activity of exploration? In fact, there are times when even GNPC wants to borrow. And we feel that if you're having money to invest in roads, why don't you use that money rather for your core programs?
Right. I'll take your final word on this, Mr. Jamna, because we've run out of
time. I think it is fair to say GNPC has explained that for them, the area where they are constructing roads are their core areas where gas is refined. So it is good to get the roads really working very well so that it will aid their operations. Let's add that we have not come to say all negative things. When you look at the Ghana Heritage Fund, which is the fund for the future generations, the fund is being built. I think at the end of 2022, we are getting towards $1 billion US. And this fund, according to the Act, is not supposed to be taxed now. It is in 2026, 15 years from 2011, that the Act says Parliament can pass a resolution to allow for a portion of the interest on the fund to be spent by government. So let the Heritage Fund continue to be built, and let the Ghana Stabilization Fund equally be built so that in times of revenue shortfalls from petroleum, we will be able to fall upon the fund to serve their purposes.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. This is all that time would allow us to do for now. I'm sure that we'll have the opportunity to bring you back if need be, to delve into perhaps other areas, or depending on some information that we get from the officials in charge for industrialization for Agenda 111 GNPC, we may get you back to speak more on these findings in the PIAC report for 2022. And we've been talking to Mr. Isaac Dramina, coordinator at PIAC, and Mr. Eric, therefore, who is also a member of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. That report is all over social media. We'll post some of the highlights on our platform so that you have a more in-depth look at it. This has been our segment. It's still Breakfast Live on GTV. We'll be back to have a lifestyle conversation on the other side of the table. See you then.
Paint is loved and trusted for its excellent quality and value for money.